Mrs. Austin, and this is my horse trainer, Charles. Jonathan!
State fermati I passeggeri. D'accordo.
Jonathan Chase, master of the secrets that divide man from animal. Animal from man. Manimal.
Ah, yes. The opening line recited by actor William Conrad at the start of nearly every episode. If you haven't already gleaned everything you need to know about what you're about to experience, then buckle up because we're diving headfirst into one of the most bizarre, earnest, and strangely unforgettable shows of the 80s. Manimal was NBC's gloriously misguided attempt to cash in on the decade's fascination with both high-concept crime fighters and apparently zoology. It only lasted 8 episodes, which is exactly the number of times the average viewer could sit through a full transformation sequence before questioning their life choices. But oh, what a weird, fog-drenched 8 episodes they were. The show introduced a very serious man who could turn into animals, not because he was cursed or bitten or exposed to nuclear slime. No, this was a skill he learned, like a foreign language, or woodworking. He studied long and hard and mastered transformation into wild and exotic animals. Welcome to 1983. Where TV logic and budget constraints ran free. The premise: one man, many animals, and minimal explanation. So what exactly is Manimal about? Dr. Jonathan Chase is a wealthy, mysterious, well-dressed professor of zoology who possesses the uncanny ability to transform into any animal he chooses. He uses this gift to assist his friend, Detective Brooke McKenzie, in solving crimes around New York City. Because, obviously, the NYPD's police dogs weren't cutting it, and they needed help from a man who occasionally turns into a panther. As far as origin stories go, the show never quite explains how or why Chase has his abilities. Even the opening narration only ever contained vague references to Chase's father, and time spent in Africa and the Himalayas, and even more vague nods to Eastern mysticism. But basically, the show and audiences kind of just shrugged it off as general magic stuff. And even though he can turn into any animal, he basically sticks with 2, a black panther and a hawk. That's pretty much it. You'd think a zoologist with magical powers might get a little more creative. An octopus for stealth missions? A rat to sneak through vents? Nope, it's a panther or a hawk. Pretty much every time. Occasionally a snake slithers into the mix, but that's about as wild as it gets. Who knows, maybe Dr. Chase hadn't mastered that divide between man and animal as much as we were told. You'd think he'd turn into a cheetah and outrun some bad guys. But instead, he turns into a hawk to gently scratch someone's cheek, or a panther to stand next to a dumpster and growl. Crime solved! Did you know the original time slot for Manimal was Friday night at 9 p.m., the same slot Dallas had on CBS? Let's just say Bobby Ewing proved more popular than Birdman crime fighter. The cast: when serious actors meet ridiculous premises. Simon MacCorkindale stars as Dr. Jonathan Chase. MacCorkindale was a classically trained British actor who delivered every line on Manimal like he was performing Shakespeare. Except that this play took place in a particularly expensive Halloween store. To his credit, he played it all with complete sincerity, which really shone through. Imagine the acting challenge. Look dead serious while morphing into a bird of prey in slow motion, with rubber feathers sprouting from your arms. That takes commitment. Melody Anderson plays Detective Brooke McKenzie. You might recognize her as Dale Arden from Flash Gordon, another cult classic that paired sincerity with absurdity. On Manimal, her primary job is to look alarmed, deliver exposition, and occasionally get captured by jewel smugglers. And then we have Glynn Turman as Ty, Jonathan's loyal valet and sidekick. Like all great superhero butlers, Ty's an ex-military man who now spends his time chauffeuring around a man who turns into a jungle cat. It's a living. Ty also functions as the show's voice of reason and comic relief, although he too is mostly used for straight-faced reaction shots as Jonathan sprouts feathers. Oh, and a quick sidebar, Glynn Turman, before this, had a legitimate shot at being Han Solo. No joke. He was in early discussions for Star Wars, but the studio wasn't ready for a black Han Solo in 1977. Fast forward a few years and he's pouring coffee for a British Hawkman. Life, huh? Behind the scenes, Stan Winston and the slowest transformations on Earth. Now, here's the part where we talk about the real star of the show, the transformations. Each episode featured at least one extended, slow as molasses metamorphosis sequence, courtesy of effects wizard Stan Winston, who would go on to create dinosaurs for Jurassic Park and robots for Terminator. Before hitting Hollywood gold in those massive successes, Winston was elbow-deep in bubbling latex panther feet for Manimal. And look, in 1983, these effects were impressive. Sort of. The camera would zoom in on Jonathan's hand, which would slowly bubble and sprout fur. Then his eyes would turn bright yellow. Then back to the hand. Then a close-up of teeth. Then more bubbling skin. The whole sequence could take up to 2 full minutes. And remember, this was on a 46-minute network show. That's nearly 5% of the runtime spent watching a man become a jungle cat every single week. The first time is kind of fascinating, but the fourth time? The eighth? It was time to get up off the couch to grab some snacks and come back when Chase had finished changing. So why was every transformation so slow? Well, they had to get their money's worth. The pilot reportedly cost nearly $1 million to produce, with most of the budget allocated to building animatronic animal parts and purchasing fog machines. And they reused that footage over and over and over again. If you've seen one transformation, you've seen them all. Literally, because they were the same clips. Recurring tropes, gritty crime meets magical zoology. If you went in expecting Chase to fight criminals with similarly exciting abilities, you would be in for disappointment. In fact, if you went in expecting anything other than the same kind of crime-fighting adventure, you were in for disappointment, because every episode follows roughly the same formula. 1. A crime occurs, usually involving smugglers, shady businessmen, or something involving diamonds. 2. Brooke and Jonathan investigate. 3. Ty makes a quip. Jonathan realizes that turning into an animal is somehow necessary. 4. Cue fog machine. Cue saxophone music. Cue 2 minutes of transformation. 5. The animal form does something mildly helpful, like knocking over a bad guy or scratching a goon's face. 6. Brooke says, "Jonathan, where are you?" 7. Problem solved. Reset for next week. There's very little continuity. No one ever questions why a zoology professor keeps showing up at crime scenes. No one ever catches on that a suspiciously helpful panther is always around when Jonathan disappears. It's like Gotham City syndrome. Nobody connects the dots. Oh, and we can't forget to mention the fog machines. You'd think the guy was transforming inside a haunted house. Every change comes with inexplicable billows of mist. It's like a David Copperfield show broke out mid-chase scene. Did you know? NBC exec Brandon Tartikoff later admitted that greenlighting Manimal was one of his biggest regrets. But also, he stood by it as an interesting failure. Let's talk about that time he fought a poacher as a falcon. In one particularly memorable episode, Jonathan investigates a big-game poacher who's smuggling animals into Manhattan. Naturally, the only way to stop him is to become a falcon, steal some incriminating documents, and then crash through a window, as you do. Another gem involves a rogue circus with illegal activities. Jonathan has to go undercover, which means more opportunities to growl menacingly as a panther while wearing his signature tan trench coat. But you know what? If you could pick an animal to go incognito around a rogue circus, you probably would pick a jungle cat too. In another episode, he fights terrorists on a train. Why do terrorists need a hawk chasing them through a rail car? Because it's Manimal, and because apparently nobody told the writers they could just write a normal cop show. The legacy, infamy, nostalgia, and cult weirdness. So what happened to Manimal? Well, like many noble creatures, it didn't survive in the wild that was 80s television. The ratings tanked after 3 episodes, but NBC aired all 8. Maybe they hoped it would gain traction, or maybe they had nothing else to show, or maybe, like us, they secretly loved Manimal and all its flaws. Over time, Manimal became a punchline, a byword for ambitious flops. It showed up on worst shows of all time lists, and yet it always earned a footnote of affection. Because yes, it was silly, but it was also sincere. It wanted to be cool, it wanted to be mysterious, and it was so incredibly 80s. Still, did you know in 2002 there were rumors of a Manimal movie reboot to be produced by DreamWorks? Yup, Spielberg's studio considered reviving Manimal. It never happened, which is somehow both a tragedy and a mercy. If you were a kid during that era, Manimal wasn't just a weird show, it was part of the cultural wallpaper. You watched it in footy pajamas while drinking Tang. You remembered the bubbling hands or protruding feathers. You tried to mimic the transformation growl. And years later, when someone says, Manimal, your brain lights up with foggy panther memories. And let's be honest, you kind of wanted those powers. Admit it. Which one of us didn't want to swoop through the air like a hawk and spy on bad guys? Or turn into a panther and scare bullies away? Before there was Animorphs, there was Manimal. Before CGI made everything slick and seamless, there was rubber claws and saxophone solos. So let's raise a fog machine in tribute to Manimal, the show that gave us a man who could turn into a hawk, and a network that thought that was enough to carry prime time. To all the 80s kids, do you remember watching this short-lived Oddball series? Do you remember thinking it was cool? Or did you just sit there, cereal bowl in hand, wondering if maybe Automan would make more sense? If you could turn into any animal to stop crime, what would it be? A badger for bar fights? A dolphin for boat chases? Or maybe you just go full panther because, hey, if it was good enough for Dr. Jonathan Chase? Leave your answers in the comments. And remember, before there was high def, before there were dark, gritty reboots, and long before the MCU, there was Manimal. One man, one panther. 8 episodes, infinite weirdness.